Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. I'm your host, Margie Schaller, and I want to welcome you and let you know that you are not alone. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you. In today's world, networking, socializing, celebrations, they all seem to happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. But through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice. So let's get the conversation started. I'm just so excited to introduce you to Natalie Fannin. Natalie has been married for almost 16 years. That's a little bit of a unicorn already. And she's a proud stepmom to 3. She and her husband are empty nesters and live in Atlanta, Georgia. And she works full-time as a pharmaceutical sales specialist. But Natalie also has a passion for motivational speaking and mindset coaching. She has been published in several magazines. But the reason I'm so excited for you to meet her today is that she's the co-founder of the growing Instagram community of Sassy Sober Living. So let's get this started. Natalie, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Now, you and I talked a little bit about our lives together before all of this, but I don't know a whole lot about you, like personally. And I always love to start with kind of understanding what role alcohol may have played in your life growing up as a kid. Like, what did you see? What did you experience? Like, what was it in your life?
Absolutely. I think that's a great place to start because I think it's fascinating how our origins actually shape how we think about alcohol. So for me growing up, I am born and raised in a very small town, and I was raised in Eastern Kentucky, and my parents still live there. So I was actually raised in a home, and my parents have been married 63 years, so which is
Wow.
amazing. And my dad is 86 and still works full time. So that just blows my mind.
Oh my gosh.
So the work ethic was definitely there. So I was raised in a very middle class family where alcohol just did not play a part in things. It was you work hard and good things happen to good people. And I was raised Southern Baptist and we were very active in the church. So alcohol was probably more shunned upon than accepted, if that makes sense. So there was never alcohol in the house. So I didn't drink growing up. I didn't drink through high school. And I think what kept me active at that point in time is I actually started competing in pageants when I was 15 years old. But I also think that's where that strive for perfection started, where you have to be the best. And if you're not winning, and so I think that, played a part. And so I didn't drink. In fact, I cheered, I danced 4 days a week, I was competing in pageants, and then that continued through college. So I was competing in pageants at a very high level. So I was and I got an academic scholarship to college. So I did not drink this whole time. My first time when I started drinking was actually when I got my first big girl sales job, is how I would describe it. And so that was at 26 years old.
Okay, so let me just backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
What is the highest level that you earned in your pageant work?
So I was in my teens. I was in third runner-up in Miss Kentucky Teen USA. And then I competed in the Miss America system. And so I was in Miss Kentucky 3 times. And I got the highest was, I think, top 10 Miss
Oh
Kentucky
my
in the
gosh.
American system. But in this, you compete a couple of times, and you compete in locals to get. So I had the same posse of pageant coaches, I would describe it as Miss Kentucky's. So I was rolling with the Miss Kentucky organization. It was awesome. Loved it.
That's amazing.
And then a few years ago, this is kind of funny. So in 2013, I thought I would compete in the Misses system here in Georgia. And I actually got third runner up. And I should not have been competing because I was like, I looked like I had a moo on compared to some of these beautiful young ladies. I should not have been competing because they were younger, but still I got third runner up. So I thought it was great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the story. So
Yes.
in some of these more religiously conservative communities, oftentimes there can be sort of an us versus them way of looking at things. Like, were people who were drinkers labeled in any way?
No, so it was more just like it wasn't a thing. And so I always joke that birds of a feather flock together. And the people that I was around and involved with, and the pageant community at the time, I would describe it, is drinking just wasn't a thing. We didn't have time to party. There wasn't. And I also think a part of that, on the flip side, there was an image to uphold, to be quite honest with you. And it's so different in today's world with the online community and how you can portray yourself. But back in the day when I was in college, I went to Morehead State University, and I competed one year in Miss Kentucky as Miss Morehead State University. So there was an image compared to that. I can't be partying at the frat club or the sorority. I wasn't in a sorority, but I couldn't be a partier because there was an expectation of the Miss America organization. That's how I would describe it. So,
okay, so you get your first job.
Yeah, so then I get this job at 26 years old. So here I am, small town girl. Now I've moved to a bigger city. I land this sales job. So Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City, but a much smaller scale. But that same perception now is I show up to the happy hours as a non-drinker, and then I'm seeing the drinking, and the perception is this is what you do. And unfortunately, I fell into the mingling and the networking and the happy hours at 501, and it just all was normal. And so what's funny to me now is it's probably still normal, but I'm the non-drinker, and I know we'll get to that, which is a big part of what you and I talk about and why we're doing this podcast and why I'm sharing, is how you can navigate that as a non-drinker. And I wish I wouldn't have started. It would have been much easier for me to have stayed a non-drinker through that time, because for example, there are people on my teams that are non-drinkers, and it's much easier for them because they started as non-drinkers. I think that was interesting in my world is I'm a non-drinker at the time, but then I started drinking, and then I fell into the drinking. So therefore, when I switched companies, I was a drinker. There was no non-drink. Does that make sense? There was no non-drinking at this point. So therefore, I'm a drinker. So now I have this persona that I'm the drinker, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So help me know, though, in those early years when you were doing the happy hours or whining and dining or the after parties, whatever the things are, did you feel as though the connections you made in those instances at the time, did you feel as though that was contributing to your success?
Probably at the time, especially in 26, being younger, that was the perception at the time. But now looking back, was it? You know what I mean? Because I'm fascinated by the idea, and I reference myself as when I was a drinker and now I'm a non-drinker. So I think that's an interesting concept to kind of wrap my head around. Even my therapist has said, wait, when you talk about yourself as a drinker, it's almost like a different time. And I know that's weird to kind of think about, but you can understand because you don't drink. There's a capacity that we have. So I also think I made a lot of excuses when I was a drinker. Everybody does it. This is normal. You look around. And in my 20s, I don't think my problem was drinking. I didn't have a problem. I probably was a very good social drinker. I think when the tide shifted, to be honest with you, is I was single. And then in 2008, I married the man of my dreams, and he just so happened to have 3 kids. But then that's when my world shifted again, because now it was, I have these kids, and work hard, play hard, hustle culture continued. But then now it's the mommy wine culture. So then I'm impacted again, birds of a feather go together. So work hard, play hard in my day job. And then now I have these 3 kids, and we're drinking at the football field in our Yetis. And all of this is totally normal.
Yep.
So I think that's the fascinating part. And I think is what's really important in my journey, and I want to make sure people understand, is there was no rock bottom for me. When all of this is happening, There's no big dramatic events. There's no big, oh my gosh, I have a problem. But what I do find fascinating is if you've ever Googled, am I an alcoholic? Or taking a test of, is my drinking normal? That's where I started to fall into. So that I think that's really important, because what's the reasonable answer to that question? And in 2015, I went to an AA meeting. And I think
Wow.
that's important because I knew what I was doing wasn't good for me in my world,
In what
but
way?
I
Uh,
just felt like the drinking had become a priority.
mm,
5:01 p.m. became a habit. There was,
mhm,
and I don't know when the line blurred from when my drinking went from this weekends to then 2015, I was probably drinking daily. How
mhm.
much? I don't remember when the line blurred, but interesting enough. So 2015, I went to an AA meeting, and we'll continue that discussion. But what I think is important about that also is that actually fueled that I was normal, because I go in that. So all the guts it took to go to this AA meeting, I go, met some wonderful people, and I don't want to bash AA at all. I think it's a beautiful thing for those that it works for. It
Yep.
Maybe I was at the wrong meeting, maybe my mindset wasn't right. There's lots of things that could have played a factor, but I walked away from that meeting going, I am not an alcoholic. These are not my people. It just wasn't a fit for me.
Yep.
So I left
Yep.
that meeting going, okay, check that box. I can move on now because I'm not an alcoholic.
Yep.
That's
I had a very similar story in let's see, I got sober in 2005. So probably, I don't know, 2002, 2003, I was dating a guy who was absolutely a raging alcoholic.
mm,
And I didn't see it at first. There we can be very sneaky and good about the way that we sort of mirror somebody, but it became apparent. And so I said, I can't continue in this relationship. And he's like, well, I need to get sober. Like, it's affecting my kids, it's affecting this relationship, all the things. And I was like, great. So he took himself off to treatment. And I thought, just in solidarity, I would check out an AA meeting to sort of see, because I was drinking heavily.
sure.
And I was able to see all the people like him who were so much worse than I was. And therefore, I was like, well, that's great. And these women surrounded me and took me on walks and like tried to befriend me. And God bless them, because clearly I belonged there differently than what other people did. But at the time, all it did was reinforce for me, like, yeah, I need to cut back or I need to stop, but I don't need this.
Absolutely resonates. And it is sad in our society, because I think also there was fear around me, and I don't know if you felt this, but the fear of quitting drinking overwhelmed me.
Panic stricken.
The thought of quitting. So ironically, the timeline, just when I sit down and do and share my story, the timeline just boggles my mind. So 2006 approximately, I start drinking. 2015, went to an AA meeting, walked out, not for me. 2018, I started a side hustle selling wine because that was a great idea. So then, not only do I not think I'm an alcoholic, which I still don't use that word, by the way. I love Meg Geiswhite's description of the gray area drinking. I probably more
Yes.
relate to that. And she wrote a book called Intoxicating Lies. I really resonate. Great book if y'all haven't listened to it or read it. Because she is also a prominent salesperson and drinking culture. So that definitely resonated with me. So then 2018, I'm selling the wine, and then I'm surrounded by all my friends and family and other people that are buying wine from me. My Instagram at the time, you're going to laugh, I was Boss Lady Wine, which now I'm Boss Lady Zero Proof. So if you
Oh
think
my
you can
gosh.
evolve, you can absolutely evolve. And that was not the intention when I started. So 2000, so the timeline then gets a little tighter. So now I'm drinking this whole time. Again, no rock bottom, no big red flags. 2018, I'm selling the wine. COVID hit. So my entire feed is the mommy wine culture. Now you're home, you're trapped. What do you need? You need more wine. So I was successful in this little wine side hustle. So I'm getting paid money, plus I'm getting cases of free wine to the house.
Right.
Cases of free wine. So I believe that's where the tide turned a bit, where my drinking, that's where I think the line blurred and my drinking went to probably a bottle a night. Of course, that was always the joke of the mommy wine culture, or where people, corks are for quitters. That was my
Right.
favorite joke. And then
And it ruins the taste of the wine if you don't finish the bottle.
absolutely. And why would I not drink the whole bottle? And now maybe I'll open a second bottle because I have all this free wine. So there was definitely a trend there that was happening. So I think what's fascinating there is I'm in a dilemma, right? Because AA didn't work. Now I'm immersed in this mommy wine culture and drinking and my little wine business. Now it's even worse than this persona of boss lady wine. Now what do? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll moderate. I will cut back my drinking. So I went through a moderation time of 6 months. And that's when the scariest moment hit, because it was AA didn't work or wasn't for me. Moderation was not working for me. That was maddening in the terms of, I've learned now, when we know better, we do better, right? So Gretchen Rubin has a fascinating article about moderators and abstainers. Has nothing to do with drinking. It's simply a personality type. So I'm not a moderator. I'm going to have a bag of chips. I'm not going to have one chip. So that's a personality thing. So now I know that about myself, but this all took this learning. So where the tide shifted is I started following sober accounts, which I think is kind of funny because I was boss lady wine, but yet I'm following these hashtags and sober accounts. And that's where I learned that another life existed, that people actually don't drink in the world, and they're sober and sober curious and all this stuff happening. I had no idea about. I actually followed an influencer. Her name is Jen Hurst, and she offered a free call, and she was featuring a speaker that day. That call changed my life. I hung up that call and I said, I'm going to quit drinking for 30 days and I'm going to see what happens. And that 30 days will be 2 years next month.
Wow.
That's the crazy part. And there's a lot of things, and we can talk about why I was successful in that journey. We can talk about that. But I just think that's the beauty of community, the beauty of what you do with these podcasts, the beauty that I'm able to be humbled to share my journey, because I always say we think we're the only ones. We think that we're sitting there and we know deep in our heart or deep in our gut, like, this is not what I want to be doing. And I just, you talked about what were the signs. I can think about drinking wine at night, and I just can't imagine doing that now. It just is so crazy to me how I have evolved. And we can talk about the keys and what I did, but you can evolve, I think, is the point.
Yeah. And we now know that this binary notion of you are an alcoholic or you're not an alcoholic is old news, right? Now we know.
Not, is it? It is in our world, in the sober world, it's a sober community, but I still perceived, and I still get the stigma.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the science now shows that it's a spectrum. And the science shows that whether you drink one drink a year or many bottles a night, a day, that there's a spectrum in there somewhere. And somewhere it's different for every person is that tipping point that you talked about, where it goes from something that you just do because you enjoy it to something that you need to do or habitually do, and it starts to cause the problems. And everybody who drinks is somewhere on that spectrum. But where the tipping point is and where it's problematic is different for everybody.
I love how you just described that, because alcohol use disorder, I have always said, if you drink, you fall somewhere on the spectrum. That's not good, bad, or ugly, but it's not just because, and to your point, the binary world, you're an alcoholic or you're not. That's the problem with society, because they still It's getting
Yes.
better, and that's the point of why we do what we do. It's getting better, but the
Yeah.
stigma still exists.
Yeah.
For example, I'm going to be 2 years alcohol free. I prefer the alcohol free term. I am celebrating next month. I can remember last year, such a sweet thing. A lady on my team said, I know you're getting ready to come up on your 1 year. Is that something we can celebrate with you? Number one,
Aw.
I thought, how wonderful that someone is self-aware enough to ask and to be considerate, to want to know if I want to celebrate. But then number two, it was a little sad because they thought maybe the stigma was around it, if I had to guess. But I did think it was so beautiful. So we did celebrate. My regional sales manager actually sent me flowers. So my team, I've had a beautiful experience with my work.
Okay,
That's
so part of my brain just went, and they're happy because you're no longer acting out in the ways that you're probably acting out in.
So what's interesting is I didn't have any acting out issues, but what I will say is I have heard comments at work since I've quit drinking and since I've grown in being a non-drinker. This is what I've noticed. I have heard comments, you have such a calm demeanor. And I'm like, wait a minute, I am not calm. I've never been described as calm. And they're like, well, maybe calm's not the word. But then it's funny when I talk to people, it's because I quit drinking, but they can't put their finger on it, especially people
Mhm.
that didn't know me 2 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
I've had dear friends and work people have said, I like you so much better not drinking. I don't know why. It's just, and
Yeah.
some people might take offense to that. I actually don't. I think it's kind of honest and sometimes critique depending on the person who's giving the feedback, but they mean it with love.
Absolutely. And think about it. I mean, why did we drink? We drank because we liked the way that it took our existing personality and did something else to it. It made us more gregarious. It made us more flirty. It made us more funny. It made us more, it took away some inhibitions. It is altering of who we are.
It is. And I think that was the scary thing of if I quit drinking, who am I?
Yes.
Because I'm part of a social circle that
Yes.
drink. My husband drinks, he still drinks. We can talk about that too, because I think that's another dynamic that, I mean, we don't have an issue, but I get that question a lot. Like, did your husband quit drinking? And he didn't. And he is so supportive of my journey. So it can happen. I think that was
Yes.
a big fear for me, though, is what will my life look like if I don't have a glass of wine in my hand? And I know that people who drink right now and people who are listening to the podcast, if they're open to learning, I think that's the key because I could not imagine a life without a wine glass in my hand.
And
And
so what is it like today?
so now I love having a wine glass in my hand. I just have club soda in it. I think that's the funny part is I was worried I was going to be not fun and not whatever. I'm actually more fun, which makes me more alert and more aware. The relationships are better. My contacts at the happy hour are much better because I'm awake and it's just so hard to explain. But telling me that as a drinker, I would have told you you were crazy. And I think that's what's so fascinating. The more we can share, especially what we're talking about in the professional world, because we get that pressure that it is part of the business. And I can tell you now that I've grown in my sobriety so much. I've grown to be more confident, and that for me. It came with time. The first 30 days, for those that want to try a cleanse, that's my best advice. The 30-day cleanse was the best thing I could have ever done. And why that was important in my journey is number one, I wanted to do 30 days, no excuses. And as a professional, it's easy to set a goal and accomplish that goal. And for me, it wasn't forever. It was 30 days. I can do this. Now, I was willing to put the work in, and that was what really made the shift. So I always say, for me, it was mindset to do it. Books and music were key to my journey, and just opening up to learning about another life. Annie Grace's book, This Naked Mind,
Yeah.
again, she talks about being a professional. I resonated with that. So the cognitive dissonance, you have to unpack that. So mindset, books and music, and then community, which is key. So what we have here, what we share, I with a friend of mine created Sassy Sober Living. And again, it's just to encourage that we cannot drink and still be fun and still be fabulous and still have all the things. And I still love happy hours. I just do club soda with lime. I love a wine glass in my hand, but I love having club soda in it. That's the biggest thing for me that has. And then after the 30 days, that was the crossroads, because 30 days came and went. And I thought, okay, I felt like the first 2 weeks were the worst for me because it was changing all the bad habits. 5:01 p.m. Now what? Because my husband had a routine, work hard, play hard. We've worked hard. And that was the other thing. I didn't think I was an alcoholic because I'd never drank before 5:01 during the week, right? I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink before 5. Weekends were totally different, but that's okay because mimosas at brunch, right? So I just think the lies I was telling myself and just the habit I got into. And all I can say is what a beautiful thing. So the 30 days then went to 60 days. And at 60 days, I took a trip to Key West for a vacation. And I had exactly. That was the reaction I got. So at 60, I decided I was going to do 60 days. So at 60 days, I decided I was going to do 90 days. At the 60-day mark, though, I had a vacation in Key West, and this was a huge milestone. So the year before, same group of people, same trip in Key West, I was a drinker. That year in Key West, 60 days sober, I wanted to stay alcohol-free during the trip. It's amazing how the universe puts people in your path. We took a food and wine tour in Key West. I just marked the non-alcoholic option. I mean, I really set myself in some scenarios I probably should not have done, but yet I was like, I'm not going to hold others back because of my sobriety. So I'm very headstrong, which was an advantage in this because I still wanted to be a participant in the food and wine. I just didn't drink. There was a lady on that tour that was sober 13 years. She got sober at 21.
Wow.
So I'm sitting across from this young, beautiful mom going, you got sober at 21. You are a genius. You know what I mean? So that impacted my journey. So then 60 days went to 90 days. Then I decided a year. And what's really funny to me, I know it's forever, but I don't put the pressure on myself to have, I think that falls under that pageant, that persona, the boss lady wine. I don't want to have to be a certain way. So now I just talk about the journey of being alcohol free. And my journey happens to be going on to 2 years.
And I think that's something that AA did get right, the notion of one day at a time.
Yes.
When I first got sober, I couldn't even function one day at a time-ish. I had to do 10 minutes at a time.
Absolutely.
And I got past 10 minutes at a time, and then it was like I could break my day into quadrants. I had my wake up in the morning to go to work. I wasn't going to ever drink then. I had my go to work. I never drank at work. Then I had the real danger zone, coming home from work into my evening. That was when it was game on for me. And then I had my sort of, I'm home, I'm settled until I go to bed. And that was generally like the after drinking. So once I could break it into those quadrants, I focused in on that third quadrant of leaving work and getting myself to my evening, whatever it was. How am I going to do that? And so
I love that. That definitely resonates. I probably did something similar. I picked in the early days, I was the calmness I struggled with. It was, wait, now I'm bored. Now what do I do? And that's fascinating to me. I didn't realize the time that drinking took space in my life. And that's what's interesting to me now. So,
okay. So Natalie, here's a funny story. I had the exact same thing. A girlfriend of mine, she's like, go to Michael's and get one of those paint by numbers things that the kids do.
Perfect. I did
And
adult coloring.
yes, and so it was because it's so meditative and small and focused, and it just transported me away for that hour that I needed to transition. Like
I love that.
I lived and died by those stupid paint by numbers.
I did adult coloring. I filled up a whole book, and now I don't adult color because again, you grow, we
Yes.
evolve, you find new hobbies. So then I turned in, I make my sister lives, you're gonna love this. My sister lives in Kentucky still, and I make her Kentucky Derby hat every year. Well, these hats are fabulous. Okay, this is not
Mhm.
just a hat. So I now have I'm making more Derby hats, which amazing enough, there's a niche. And but I would have never had the time for that because I would
Right.
have been drinking my wine. And now I've written articles and I just look at my journey and I'm just so grateful for how I've evolved. And when people say to me, "Oh my gosh, you know that how do you have the time?" And it's all because I quit drinking.
Yeah.
I get what I think the other interesting thing is if we talked about the benefits of not drinking like it was an infomercial, we would all buy it. Right? So better skin, better memory, better sleep. I mean, you can decrease risk of 7 different types of cancer. I have a breast cancer scare. My doctor never mentioned not drinking. So I mentioned that to him recently and he didn't know what to say. I said, "Hey, I quit drinking." He said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "It decreases breast cancer 15% compared to moderate drinkers." He laughed and kind of went, "I know." And I said, "So why aren't we talking about that?" Because I was Googling herbs to decrease breast cancer risk, and all I needed to do was put down the wine bottle. And I
And what
think
did he say?
he said, "You are absolutely correct." And I said, "So why don't we talk about that?" And he walked out and said, "Oh, I've got to go see other patients."
Oh no.
And it's just a shame. But again, the health benefits around not drinking, women, if you talk about better skin, all these skin products, we would buy it. And that was the biggest thing for me, that the puffiness, the
Yes.
dehydration, all of this gets better. I was getting, did you have an eye lift? Did you have Botox? How much weight have you lost? All of that happened within the first 30, 60, 90 days. And what a great ego boost when you start
Right?
feeling better and thinking, wow, other people are seeing it. My husband's encouraging me. My friends encourage me. And I think that's a key point. I still am involved and best friends, and I still am with the same people. I'm still fun not drinking. I still
Yes.
love these people not drinking. And I didn't know if I would, to be honest with you. I didn't know if
Yeah.
I would still like my husband. And I know that sounds rude. I didn't know if he would still like me. And
Yeah.
now I've come so far that, for example, last week, and I think I've emailed you about this, but a couple of weeks ago, I had a huge national sales meeting at a location. Of course, they started the happy hour, and here comes the bar. And I thought, oh, I just wonder if they have something non alcoholic. And I said, "I know you probably don't, but do you happen to have a non alcoholic beer?" And they did. I about fell over. I thought, what a difference in my company. Because the year before, they didn't have those options. And I was kind of
Mhm.
vocal, like we should have options. So I was super proud. Maybe it was for me. Maybe I had nothing to do with it. But I will tell you that made my happy hour so much better because it looked like I was just
Yeah.
part of it. And nobody cares. I think that's the other thing. I had too much of a concern what people would think about me not
Okay, so
drinking.
that's where I want to go with our remaining time. I want you to talk to the person who isn't drinking and is maybe in sales,
Yes.
and their job is to go to these sorts of things or to wine and dine people, and they're not prepared to talk about it.
100%.
So tell me what you would advise that person in navigating their sales world as a non-drinker,
I love
non-drinker.
I love that. So I call those the secret sober people because they don't want to drink, especially maybe just at a work meeting. They don't want to drink. And so for me, that first meeting was key for me because again, it's breaking the habits. So instead of being the first one at the bar at 5:01, I still was. I just had the club soda. I was still social. But the key for me, that what made me successful that first meeting, my advice would be tell 2 people or tell 1 person. So I told 2 colleagues that I worked directly with, and I said, hey, I'm going to try to not drink at this meeting. If I look uncomfortable, just check on me, make sure I'm okay. And it worked beautifully because I felt confident when I finished the week as a non-drinker, because I was like, wow, I did that. You get more time under your belt. You get more confident. I also would say for the secret sober people that they try to look like they're blending in. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But what makes me really happy is when I'm not drinking, I'm pretty vocal about not drinking and sharing that because I'm super proud to be a non-drinker. I've noticed that the secret sober people will pull me to the side and say, thank you so much, because I don't drink either. So hopefully, and what the reason we do what we do and why you are doing this is one day when we say we're a non-drinker, I'm so excited for the day that we're not looked at with stigma, but we're looked at with, oh my gosh, absolutely, congratulations. But I think we'll get there. I kind of think we'll get to where drinking will be looked at like smoking. At one time it was cool and now it's not anymore, especially the health benefits. I think that's what fascinated me, the science. So if anybody's into science, I highly recommend Huberman Labs. It's not a non-drinking podcast, but he did an episode about what alcohol does to your body. So just search Huberman and alcohol, you'll find it. That episode changed my life, because I thought, wow, oh gosh, I had no idea. So I just think, so just have a sober buddy would be my best description. Tell a colleague that you can have accountability to, and then just do what feels comfortable to you.
Yeah, I love that so much. So one last piece of advice question.
Yes.
So it sounds like you've been fairly open from the get-go, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people who have come up to you and said, oh, come on, just join us in a shot, or oh, come on, try
Absolutely.
this thing. So
Absolutely.
how do you deal with those moments?
So it depends on the person, but I have a couple of different things. Because, for example, at my meeting the other day, I said, I'm going to go get another beer. I meant a non-alcoholic beer. And someone reacted and said, you're going to drink tonight? And I joked and turned around and said, I'm not being mean, but if I was going to break my sobriety, it's not going to be with y'all. I love you. So that's a funny way to do it. I was with my husband over the weekend at his high school reunion, and a girl said, let's go to the bar and take a shot. And I said, oh, no, thanks, I don't drink. And she's like, oh, come on, we did it last time, which would have been 2 years ago. And I said, oh, maybe we did then, but no, I'm going on 2 years. And I think, again, that confidence comes with time, because if you're confident in your reply, like, no, I'm not drinking tonight. The best excuse, if you don't want to get into it like I do, because I don't care to tell my story, but if you don't want to, I think the easiest way is, I'm on a medication, I can't drink this week, or I'm trying to cleanse with my gym. That saved my life those first 30 days. And also there's a thing called 75 Hard, which is a health wellness mindset challenge. And you're not supposed to drink for 75 days. But I always say, whatever it takes, whatever you need to do to get by, use that excuse. Because quite honestly, it's nobody's business. And they won't be concerned as the night goes on. And I will say my patience does get a little thin by 10 o'clock, I'm done. Probably more like 8:30, but I feel like by that point, I've made the connections, I've done what I've needed to do. And I would just say 30-day cleanse, see how you feel. But the biggest thing, be open to learning about how you feel and do the work and just see how it turns out, because you never know.
I love that. I love that. Natalie, we've started with your origin story. I'd like to end with your legacy story.
Wow.
What legacy would you like to leave in this part of your journey?
Oh, wow. So I think, oh, I could cry a little bit. I think what I'm most humbled about now are the women who reach out to me, who hear me on a podcast or they read the article. And when they reach out to me I've only got 40 hours of sobriety. And I just want to be a cheerleader. I want to encourage people. So I've always said if I could impact one person, but now I'm impacting those people along the way. So my legacy, I just want to make a positive impact for a positive choice in a really beautiful way. And I want to glamorize sobriety. I learned that from a Facebook or an Instagram account, Amanda Kuda, another great book on bottle potential. But she put a post out that someone had messaged her, I love how you glamorize sobriety. That's what I want to be known for.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At Sober Life Rocks, we want to empower women and men in their professional lives, and you embody that.
Thank you.
And I am grateful for you for coming on today.
Well, I'm so grateful you allowed me to share. And if anybody wants to hit me a message, I'd love to know, and I'll be cheering you on. Boss Lady Zero Proof on Instagram. So I'm so proud that anyone who attempts it, doesn't matter how many day ones, we all get to a certain part and get comfortable in our journey.
Awesome. All right. Well, until next time, thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank you.